Good afternoon. Getting right down to business here. We are doing it live, doing more at 4 weekday afternoons. Mottek On Money, live on the air, 790 KBC, streaming live online worldwide at KBC.com. And yes, the on-demand Mottek On Money podcast, KBC.com, Apple, iTunes, YouTube, and all your favorite podcast platforms. Big start to the new week on Wall Street, building on last week's recovery. Stocks moving higher today on new optimism that President Trump may hold back from implementing some of the tariffs plans, and so the U.S. could possibly head off an economic slowdown and a trade and tariff war. The Dow jumping nearly 600 points today. The NASDAQ composite also popped higher by more than 400 points, and the S&P 500 gained 100. Shares of Tesla down 9 straight weeks, up nearly 12% today, adding to the gains we saw on Friday. Meta Platforms and NVIDIA in the tech space each climbed more than 3% as well. Investors remain jittery over the potential rise in inflation and recession concerns over tariff worries ahead of President Trump's April 2nd start date for reciprocal tariffs that have been threatened. But today the market's got a boost on reports tariffs could be more narrow in scope and that sector-specific tariffs the president is looking at are expected to be delayed, according to the Wall Street Journal and other sources. President Trump said late today that he may give a lot of countries breaks on reciprocal tariffs. The market cheered that, and we saw an impressive rally today, including Tesla rebounding more than $30 a share today to $278 and change. The nation's political battleground shifting to the stock market this week. And we saw the reports, Commerce Secretary Lutnick urging people to buy shares of Tesla, and Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, who was Kamala Harris's running mate, mocked the EV giant's share price drop. The FBI, meanwhile, launching a task force now to investigate threats against Tesla on reports that multiple incendiary devices were found in an Austin, Texas showroom. Looks like Ford, also in the spotlight today, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration opening an investigation into 1.3 million Ford trucks due to the potential for an unexpected gear downshift. Ford stock did close higher today. South Korea's auto giant Hyundai, meanwhile, making a big announcement, a multi-billion-dollar investment in the United States, including a new $5.8 billion steel plant. The President Trump, making the announcement alongside the Hyundai executive chairman today. Shares of LA-based homebuilder KB Home moving lower in after-hours trading. The company reported earnings and revenue that missed analyst expectations. 23andMe holding company stock plunged today after that DNA testing company filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy after admitting there was substantial doubt about its ability to continue going as a business. That was a once high-flying consumer health company. It warned last year that they may not survive, and big announcement today that they are indeed filing for bankruptcy. Remains to be seen what's going to happen to 23andMe. Atlanta Fed President Raphael Bostic, former USC professor here in Southern California, now the Atlanta Fed president, said he now sees only one interest rate cut this year. That's down from his earlier expectation of 2 rate cuts. He told Bloomberg today that he changed his forecast because he foresees inflation as very bumpy this year and likely to move sideways. Today, by the way, or this week, by the way, marks the 25th anniversary of the peak of the dot-com bubble and the day the NASDAQ died back in those days 25 years ago. Oil hedging higher again today with President Trump threatening tariffs on any country buying oil from Venezuela. The president says he'll impose 25% tariffs on countries buying oil or gas from Venezuela because Venezuela, he says, has been very hostile to the United States, including sending violent criminal gangs into the U.S. I'll discuss gas and oil prices this hour with oil analyst John KILDUFF at Again Capital and CNBC contributor. How are small businesses holding up these days in the face of many challenges, including the firestorm here, tariffs, uncertainty, taxes, and regulation? The small business tax deduction will expire this year unless Congress takes action. We'll get an update on all that from Brad Close, president of the National Federation of Independent Business, the NFIB, will be joining me live later this hour. But right now on Your Money, the markets, the economy, today's tech rally, and more. Joining us live now, Daniel IVES, Managing Director and Global Head of Technology Research at Wedbush Securities, headquartered right here in downtown Los Angeles. Daniel IVES, thank you very much for taking the call here this afternoon.
Great to be here.
Daniel, it's great to have you with us here, and give us your reaction to this impressive tech rally to kick off the new week here.
Yeah, Frank, look, it's a game of high-stakes poker, and streets basically reading Trump as backing off on some of the tariffs. And that's bullish because it speaks to ultimately what the end game is here. And I think investors are kind of reading through this as, this is the time for sort of that risk-on trade again. I think stocks got way overdone on the downside. And, if tariffs come off a bit, I mean, this is kind of a risk-on game back on.
All right, you did a great job with your latest article on Tesla. What about Tesla here, which saw that big bounce back today, and obviously, given what's going on with this violence directed at Teslas themselves and Tesla owners and Tesla dealerships and so forth, and now the FBI launching investigation to investigate all of these threats. The big news here, the FBI launching a task force now in conjunction with the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms to coordinate investigative activity and crack down on violent Tesla attacks. Give us your full assessment here of what's happening with Tesla.
Yeah, so let's just take a step back. I mean, look, no investor wants Tesla to become a political symbol. And that's just sort of what it's become here in the firestorm in terms of Musk, Doge, and obviously, Trump administration. I think they're definitely going through a bit of a grand crisis tornado, I'll call it. But I think last week, a huge step forward when Musk did the all hands meeting for employees and obviously for investors. Our view is they could get through this with scars, maybe some stitches, but it doesn't significantly impact the long-term brand, the long-term growth trajectory. I think what investors are seeing today is, okay, there's going to be some scrapes, and obviously, you'll have kind of 5-10% maybe headwind when it comes to sales, but the long-term Tesla story is well intact, but obviously Musk needs to balance Doge and being CEO of Tesla.
Looks like he's getting support from the White House, including from the Commerce Secretary this past week, right, who flat out said buy Tesla.
Yeah, and again, my view of that's not necessarily a positive thing, because, look, every time something comes out of the White House for Tesla, it just further makes it a political symbol. The goal for Musk is maybe to take a little step back when it comes to Doge and, and ultimately let everything play out how it's going to play out in terms of just Tesla, in my view, along with NVIDIA, two of the best disruptive technology players over the next decade. So I think that right now is the balance for Musk. Step forward last week in terms of the all hands meeting. Look, but the protests will continue, and you have to almost separate out. We've been here many times for Tesla's story. 6 times they've had peak to trough sell off 50%. I don't view this as, a black swan event, but Musk needs to balance politician and being CEO of Tesla.
On the air live with Daniel Ives, Managing Director and Global Head of Technology Research at Wedbush Securities, which happens to be headquartered right here in downtown Los Angeles. So we did see Tesla up nearly $30 today, back to $278 and change after a streak of losing weeks here. Where do you see Tesla stock go from here?
Look, I mean, in my opinion, next 12 to 18 months, it's a double from here. Now, look, I'm not saying the stock can't go lower, but we're talking about autonomous and robotics that essentially they're going to really dominate when it comes to, in the U.S. So I think potentially the bottom in Tesla is in, but it needs to continue to play out. And a lot of this is really going to be how Musk navigates this very, very tight wire act between Doge and Tesla.
Tesla also has big operations in China. They came through that report last week, which was denied in the New York Times, that Elon Musk was about to get a briefing on China at the White House and so forth. What about that component? What do you see ahead on the China front as it relates to Tesla?
Look, I mean, 40 to 50% of demand comes out of China for Tesla, as well as production. Now, again, when it comes to stories and some of the things in Musk and China, obviously that needs to all play itself out. But, I mean, China is very, very important to Tesla. And it speaks also, you talk about tariffs. The other thing at play here is like export controls, China. Remember, that's the biggest thing when it comes to like AI revolution, chips, NVIDIA, Tesla itself, right? So I think right now, when you look at everything that's happening for Musk, it continues to really be focused on execution, what they can do. But a lot of the rules of the game are obviously being, definitely changed day to day, and that's something that the market's adjusting to.
The other thing Elon Musk is involved in, of course, is X, formerly known as Twitter, and it looks like the valuation of X has gone up dramatically. Have you followed that story as well?
Yeah, I mean, as someone that covered Twitter, covered X,
Yep.
it goes back to 44 billion, probably went to a valuation, I'd say 10 to 12 billion, and now probably back to about 44 billion, when you look at reports. And I think it comes down to, for Musk, he's playing the long game. And even though in the near term there's so much disruption, so much controversy, it's hard to argue with the moves he's made. And I think Twitter being a perfect example of, even when you think for Musk, I mean, the bet he made was on Twitter, but the bet he also made was on Trump. I could say on the autonomous side, that's going to be a huge benefit in terms of fast tracking that for Musk. In the near term, the Doge issues, that's clearly been, a huge sort of lightning rod or third rail issue, but he needs to navigate it to get onto the other side, just like he's done many times.
In the background of all of this, the tremendous success of SpaceX with that successful rescue mission of the astronauts last week, and one successful launch after another from California as well as Florida, the Falcon 9 rockets, and the deployment of that satellite array above us all here. When do you think SpaceX might go public?
If you're listening to sports,
if you're looking for an edge rusher, looking for a run stuffer, you're looking for a big-time player in the middle of your defense, you're in luck.
Mixed with pop culture, sprinkled with celebrity interviews.
If you hated the title Everybody Loves Raymond.
That's true.
Is it appropriate for you to tell people to hurry it up?
It's appropriate on Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Bill Burr is here.
I want to know who you defeated to get that title as best dad ever.
I'm the Gonzaga of dads.
And you're enjoying the Rich Eisen Show podcast. Follow and listen on your favorite platform.
I mean, look, that's a big question. If that happens next, call it 1 to 2 years, I mean, the valuation of SpaceX, continues to go higher because it's really, the U.S. space program is essentially bet on SpaceX to actually be that foundation. But look, as much as we talk about what happened with Tesla last week, and then you look at SpaceX rescuing the astronauts, obviously that's one of the highlights, ever in the space program, but especially when it came to Musk for SpaceX. So, look, it goes back to, for Musk, love him or hate him, he's become an epicenter, really globally, from SpaceX to Tesla, and some of the other ventures in terms of AI. And that, look, and with that, and we see with Tesla shareholders that see it every day, that comes with, a lot of ups, a lot of downs, but I think ultimately, Tesla's a $2 trillion market cap over the next few years.
Zooming out to the bigger tech picture, which you cover very, very closely, do you think tech has bottomed out here, given this rough patch we've seen? The Mag 7 names are rebounding, NVIDIA, Apple, Tesla, and the list goes on here. What are your thoughts about this tech sector that's taken such a big hit and now appears to be on the rebound?
I mean, our view, and you follow what we talk about closely. We feel like the bottom is really in for tech in March. I mean, the sell-off that we saw is really historic, and I don't believe that this is the end of this tech bull market. I think it continues based on we're in the fourth industrial revolution. Look, no one knows the rules of the game. There's a lot of moving parts. That adds uncertainty, and you've seen that massive risk off. But the view that this is the end of sort of this tech run, I just strongly disagree with. I mean, my view is tech makes new all-time highs, probably in the second half of the year.
All right, and then we're watching crypto, too, which you certainly keep an eye on. As the NASDAQ rallied, we did see a Bitcoin move closer to 88,000 here at the moment. That's where it's at. What are your views on what's going on with the cryptos today?
It's the risk on, risk off, right? But you're going to just have more and more companies following at least some of the blueprint that we've seen with Sauer and MicroStrategy. And I think to think that this is sort of the end of this sort of run in crypto and Bitcoin, I think it's the wrong move, because I think more and more companies are going to start to go down that path. And obviously the regulatory environment is much more positive when it comes to crypto under the Trump administration.
Saylor had signaled another purchase, right? And then sure enough, we did see a Bitcoin rally. Do you follow what Saylor has to say? What strategy buys getting a lot of attention?
Yeah, look, I've known Saylor 25 years personally, right? So the point is, like, it's hard to bet against him. Directionally, he's been extremely accurate, right? But I think the other thing, it's not just about MicroStrategy. It's just about other public companies. Do they go down this route? Do they start to own a part of their treasury in terms of Bitcoin? What is the what does the regulatory environment look like? Obviously, continues to be much more favorable when it comes to crypto. I mean, these are all things that are happening. That's why in the Trump administration, clearly tariffs and a lot of moving parts and news coming out every 30 minutes, it's been the huge overhang for the market. But I think as it settles down, investors are trying to see forest through the trees. And that's what you saw with the market up today. It's kind of looking through this game of poker.
How do you see things coming together here with this pro-crypto administration in place? Ironically, we saw that sell-off after that big gathering of crypto folk at the White House a couple of weeks ago, and now a bit of a bounce back here just today. How are things coming together here, and what does a pro-crypto administration mean for these prices?
Look, I mean, it's obviously positive, but you got to see how it ultimately comes together in terms of how companies adopt it. What are the newer initiatives? What are partnerships? It's not just about ETFs and everything like that happening. It's about blockchain. It's the use cases. I mean, these are some of the most important things when it comes to crypto in terms of how it all plays out, not just for Bitcoin, but obviously for other tokens.
Any specific places where you're putting money now and or taking it off the table?
I mean, to me, it's a risk-on environment in tech. I think in 25 years doing this, like, the tech sell-off over the last, call it, 4 to 6 weeks, it's probably, I could count, that would be like a top 5 jaw dropper relative to fundamentals that I've seen. I'm not saying it's easy investing, because obviously in Trump administration, you just don't, the news and the headlines and uncertainty and the tariffs. But I think if you see forest through the trees, I mean, I just believe when it comes to like Mag 7, software, cybersecurity, I mean, those continue to be the names front and center.
One tech name, one consumer tech-related name that got attention today is that 23andMe company, the DNA testing company, filing for Chapter 11. The stock closed down $1.0673. What do you think is going to come of that one?
Look, I can't speak to, but the one thing I just tell you, that's like you focus on the winners instead of the losers. You focus on the ones with fundamental, strong business models for the long term. And I think it's an example that you highlight. You can't just get caught up in maybe some of the near-term sort of buzz. And that's why I continue to focus on winners, enterprise, consumer AI, where the real spending is. And I think it's just a cautionary tale.
Excellent. Well, Daniel, thank you very much for joining us live here this afternoon. We'll continue to follow you on social media and look forward to getting your views here. Appreciate it very much. Daniel Ives, getting lots of attention. Also a great write-up in the New York Post over the weekend as well with Charlie Gasparino there. And we follow you closely here, Daniel. Thank you very much for joining us live here. Daniel Ives, Managing Director and Global Head of Technology Research at Wedbush Securities, headquartered right here in downtown Los Angeles. Daniel, thank you very much for joining us here this afternoon. And out to the freeways now, 790 KABC. Mottek On Money continues, 790 KABC. Good afternoon. We have a winner starting the new week. The Dow up nearly 600 points today, up 598 at 42,583. The S&P 500 up 100 at 5,767. And the NASDAQ gained 404 points at 18,188. The yield on the 10-year note now 4.35%. Stocks moving higher. Optimism that President Trump may hold back from implementing some of the tariffs he's talking about, head off an economic slowdown and a trade and tariff war. The market reacting positively, and shares of Tesla, which have been down 9 weeks in a row, closing up nearly 12% today. Tesla shares popping nearly $30 to $278 and change. Checking some of the other tech names here, we see NVIDIA up nearly 4 at $121 and change, and Apple up nearly $250 at $220.73. Crypto's also getting a lift today with the Bitcoin popping above 88,000 for a while. Bitcoin blowing past 88K within hours of Strategy, formerly known as MicroStrategy, announcing a purchase of Bitcoin worth $584 million. Strategy recently revealed that it bought 6,911 Bitcoin between March 17th and yesterday for about $584.1 million in cash. MicroStrategy is led by Michael Saylor, who we just talked about, has pursued Bitcoin acquisitions over the last 5 years. He's the company's the largest corporate holder of Bitcoin, and looks like the company holds 2.37% of total Bitcoin supply, according to Bitcoin Treasuries, which keeps track of that sort of thing. The price of Bitcoin rallied past 88K following the announcement, got close to 89K, as a matter of fact, right now hovering just below 88,000, down about 300 at 87,900 or so. Ethereum down 7 at 2,077 here, and Doge at the moment at 18 cents. And now the latest news on 790 KABC. Mottek On Money continues here, 790 KABC. Gas and oil prices back in the spotlight today. Oil edged higher. President Trump threatened U.S. tariffs on any country buying oil from Venezuela. The president says he'll impose 25% tariffs on countries buying oil or gas from Venezuela because Venezuela has been very hostile to the U.S., he says, including sending violent criminal gangs into this country. Looks like the price of gas here in the Los Angeles area is about 12 cents below where it was a month ago, despite the big drop we've seen in oil prices lately, which moved into the mid-60s from above 80 earlier this year. Let's bring in our oil analyst extraordinaire. That is John KILDUFF, oil analyst at Again Capital and CNBC contributor, longtime contributor to this program, too. John, thank you very much for joining us live here this afternoon.
Great to be on with you, as always, Frank, and you're too kind with your accolades for me, but thank you.
Thank you. Well-deserved. And let me ask you about the latest news here. Take it from the top and give us your reaction to this latest news regarding President Trump and Venezuela and the oil that he's saying any country buying oil from Venezuela will be penalized with 25% tariffs.
Yes, which apparently will be on top of any other tariffs that are in place. So for a country like China or in some of the other countries, you could be seeing tariff rates as high as 45% with this. I will tell you, Frank, the situation in Venezuela for me is just so sad because as I go look back in my career, it was such a fantastic country, blessed with all this oil wealth. That Venezuela actually has the #1 oil reserves in the world, just waiting to be tapped. Their oil is custom made for our Gulf Coast refiners. It was a great symbiotic relationship. But boy, oh boy, Hugo Chavez, name from the past, President Maduro now just took this socialist route and just decimated that country's oil industry and the economy there and everything else. So it's just a really sad situation. And it's good that President Trump is trying to put the pressure back on Venezuela because something needs to change there. The people there in Caracas, especially, I had friends down there, just too great to see this go on any really much longer. Venezuela, though, like I just said, has been decimated in terms of its oil production, output, and exports, so not a huge player. What happens is that they get exploited by countries like China and some of the others, and Cuba and the like, because they can't sell it really to anybody because there's already so many sanctions on them. So they're going to have to resort now to the trickery that Iran undertakes all the time to mask these sales and hide these sales. I'll tell you, President Trump was smart as well because he's targeting the Chinese independent refiners. These are these smaller guys that make up a good amount of refined products that get exported to the West. So they're not going to take the chance on getting hammered with these tariffs or any other kind of sanction on Venezuela. So they will diversify. So this will pinch Venezuela's output. So I look forward to this President Trump's goals here being met when it comes to Venezuela. But there's so much going on in this market, Frank. The various tariffs, the changes about them, the ebb and flow of the news here regarding the administration's position. The fact that we're hovering right around $70 a barrel for WTI, I think, is a good level. It's reflective of really the dueling inputs in terms of price, supply, demand, and the various dynamics here.
Michael Rosenbaum and his Smallville co-stars take you behind the scenes of one of the greatest shows of all time.
Talkville.
I just had a flashback.
Tom Welling's here.
We're going to do a podcast
Throughout the year, we've got a lot of season ahead of us.
It's big talk.
This is good fan stuff.
Yeah, there was some good
stuff. If you're watching the show, this is good stuff.
Yeah.
On Smallville.
Yeah.
They made it like this is the first time they've seen the guy ball.
That's hard.
I thought it was pretty dark.
It's Talkville.
We're pumped.
The Smallville Rewatch Podcast.
You got to be a part of it.
Follow and listen on your favorite platform.
Right, including violence flaring up again in the Middle East and military action back and forth there. Talk of a ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine, and China also a big part of all of this. Given all of these inputs here, John Kilduff, where do you see the price of oil go from here?
I still think downward pressure is the path of least resistance here, Frank. We still have plenty of issues. To the extent these tariffs kick in, they will be somewhat negative for the economy, at least for a time. Also, too, the U.S. economy right now, the GDP is flagging a bit, and China still, although they're definitely moving heaven and earth to try to revive their economy, which would translate into a bump higher in demand for crude oil and refined products. They're just not there, and they're just not getting there. For whatever reason. We'll have to see it this last week. They announced another round of economic stimulus that they're trying to do to pull themselves out of this rut, but it's just not happening. So I do think it's going to be a good summer for gasoline prices, even in California, and it's going to be a decent year for the oil and gas companies, because even with prices at above 60, they're doing very well. They're not hitting it out of the park. It's not the record kind of revenues or earnings that you would hear from ExxonMobil or Chevron and the like when prices are above 100. But I think this is a price level everybody can sort of live with for now, and should be supportive of the economy despite everything else that's happening right now.
Californians, meanwhile, as always, grinning and bearing the prices at the pump here. I'm looking at the latest AAA fuel gauge survey, 466. The average price for regular gas here in the Los Angeles area, $5.03 now. The average price for premium, I see the national average is $3.12 a gallon, well ahead of that $4.66 we're paying here in California. And Californians paying, about 15 cents a gallon more than they're paying in the middle of the Pacific Ocean in Hawaii, where the regular average price is $4.51 now in Honolulu. What is the outlook for gas prices here in California, John?
They'll only get modestly better, Frank, and modestly lower. I mean, you're going to have to see WTI crude oil prices get down, into the 50s, I think, for you guys to see any kind of meaningful relief, unfortunately, just because of all the things that have been done. This is what the assault on the industry out there gets you. I hate to put it that way. But when you target refineries, when you won't allow pipelines, when you have all kinds of extra pollution controls put into your gasoline formulation so that you really can't get it from anywhere else. You kind of have to home brew it, or bring in precursor gasoline that then gets ginned up into what the California Air Resources Board wants it to be. This is what you get. So you have to be careful. I mean, the lowest prices in the country are like in Oklahoma and Texas, where they're right by the supply and also don't have the kind of, crazy or emphatic, if you will, air regulations. So you're bearing the burden of all these, well-intentioned, I guess, environmental regulations that are out there. At what point it'll hurt the economy and the average person in California, I think you're probably already seeing that. But that's certainly a big factor. And those higher prices, do hurt demand, obviously. But the rest of the country, the rest of the world really certainly benefiting from the lower prices, the calming of the situation in the Middle East to a degree. And even these talks that you referenced between the U.S., Russia, and Ukraine, even about a potential Black Sea ceasefire, Frank, which would, take the region into a place there where we'd see less fighting and potentially maybe even open up the door to renewed crude oil exports and refined product exports to the West from Russia, will help, engineer even a lower price. But I'm not sure you guys that in California specifically will benefit from that unless prices drop a good $20 a barrel more from where we are right now.
Thanks for that thorough analysis. As always, it should also be noted that 100 years ago, California accounted for 25% of the world's oil production. Believe it or not, we're basically swimming in oil. Anytime we're out here in Los Angeles, we'll go over to the La Brea tar pits there at the corner of Wilshire Boulevard and Curzon. You can see that tar pit there, which is oil, of course, coming right out of the ground, ready to be used, which is not. So, from an investment standpoint, John KILDUFF, what looks attractive to you in the energy patch here before we let you off the hook?
I still like the major integrateds principally because of the natural gas exposure, Frank. ExxonMobil, Chevron are the kingpins still. They're the New York Yankees, both of them, the Dodgers, excuse me, of the S&P 500 energy sector. Stick with them; they'll take care of you.
Terrific, John. Thank you very much for joining us live here. That is oil analyst John KILDUFF at Again Capital, CNBC contributor, longtime contributor to this program. John, always fantastic to have you with us, and look forward to many more conversations with you. Thank you very much for joining us live here this afternoon.
My pleasure, Frank. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Out to the freeways now, 790 KBC. Mottek On Money continues, 790 KBC, standing tall for small business here in Southern California. How are small businesses holding up these days in the face of many big challenges? Certainly the firestorm recovery here, tariffs, uncertainty, taxes, and regulation. Small business tax deduction will expire this year unless Congress takes action. Joining us live now is Brad Close, the president of the National Federation of Independent Business, the NFIB, which is the voice of small business here in the USA. Brad Close, thank you very much for joining us live here. Appreciate it very much. And take it from the top. Give us your assessment of the mood of small business in America these days.
Well, they're a little concerned about the economy going forward. They're doing not bad, but after getting through the pandemic and 3 or 4 years of inflation, I think they're ready for the economy to take off. One of their big concerns is the 2017 tax cuts are going to expire at the end of this year, and in particular, the one that 26 million small businesses are using right now, the 20% small business deduction, expires at the end of the year. And if that happens, a lot of small businesses are going to face a massive tax hike going into next year.
All right, where do things stand with that?
Well, they passed the budget in the House and Senate, so they need to come together, get that signed by the president, and then they can start on this tax bill. So we are urging Congress to do it soon. There's really no need to wait. This is a provision that has really helped small business owners create new jobs, create new benefits, buy machinery, expand their business. It's something that they've used, and it will have a huge economic impact on the economy going forward if it's made permanent.
Right, and that's the goal here, to make it permanent so we don't go through this every couple of years, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think for a small business owner, and we are talking, politicians sometimes forget that small business owners really are small. They're 5, 10 employees, a lot of sole proprietors. For them, having that certainty on where their tax rates are going to be will allow them to plan. But right now, they know at the end of the year, things could change dramatically for next year.
All right. What's happening with the NFIB membership then? Are you rallying the troops to lobby members of Congress? Who's holding this thing up?
Yeah, we sure are. We're getting good supportive comments and all from the House and Senate. The president and the administration is 100% supportive behind this. We just want them to get going. So we've had some small business summits where we've flown business owners from all over the country in, true small business owners who can talk to their legislators and tell them why this needs to get done. But furthermore, tell them what it has meant to them, what it'll mean to them if it's made permanent, but really to show what they've used it for over the last 3 or 4 years. And for a lot of small businesses, it's not a lot of money. It could be a few $1,000s, $8,000, $10,000, $12,000 a year, but that's money that is theirs to start with, and they're allowed to keep it in their business and put it back to work.
Of course, businesses here in the Los Angeles area facing the unique challenge of recovering from this horrific firestorm earlier this year. I know certainly businesses here would appreciate anything that you could do from your vantage point there. There's Steadfast LA and other initiatives here that are eager to connect with businesses nationwide to speed up the recovery effort here. Give us your thoughts about what's happening here in the Los Angeles area.
Well, I've got family from out there, so I know and know all the areas that were just devastated pretty well. So our California chapter has been active with the members, letting them know small business where they can find resources and help, who they can turn to, where if they're struggling right now, what they can do. So we want to really just steer them in the right direction, help them, encourage them, and really what we want to make sure is that government is not a barrier and a wall to them getting help, and that's for whether it's regulatory policy, tax policy, but really just make sure the environment from the government allows small businesses to prosper and to stay in business and help their employees.
And certainly, you got a great team out here. We've been in touch with them. And what feedback are you getting on how this recovery is going, especially as it relates to getting businesses reopened in the devastated area and access restored as well?
I think it's been really slow. I think we've been disappointed. I realize how bad the fires were, and it wasn't just that businesses are closed. It's just so many of them, including people's homes, are gone. Right? They've got to start, and for some businesses, it's possible to relocate quickly. For a lot of businesses, a lot of traditional kind of bricks and mortar businesses, it's going to take a long road to get back if they can do that.
What are some of the other big issues on the small business radar screen these days? We just attended the big Los Angeles County Business Federation Busy Awards, where pro-business people and businesses, civic leaders were honored and certainly celebrated. And the new list of big business issues came up. Certainly homelessness and crimes also very much at the top of these lists these days.
Yeah, I think for our members, for small business owners generally, it's making sure the government just doesn't overdo it. They tend to go too far, whether we're talking state governments or the federal government, and they don't have a good sense of that there's this one-size-fits-all idea that we pass a new regulation or law, it's going to affect everybody the same. It's not the case. Usually the stuff that's hurtful to business hurts small businesses more, and sometimes the things that are intended to help business in general doesn't always filter down to the small business level. So I think we spend a lot of time talking to legislators, governors, folks in the administration about what the true impact of some of the ideas they're kicking around would actually be before they get put into law.
Well, Brad Close, the president of the National Federation of Independent Business, the NFIB, will keep an open line to you as we follow all these big developments here. Hopefully some good news coming out of Washington soon on this extension of the tax break for small businesses, and small business tax deduction will expire this year unless Congress takes action very soon. We'll keep a close watch on that. Pardon the pun. Brad Close, president of the NFIB, thank you very much for joining us live here this afternoon.
Thank you. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you very much, and all the best to you and everybody there at the NFIB. Recapping the day on Wall Street, we have something positive to recap today. The Dow nearly 600 points to kick off the new week at 42,583. The S&P 500 up 100 at 5,767. And the NASDAQ gained more than 400 points at 18,188. The yield in the 10-year note is back up to 4.35%. Cryptos also rallied, with Bitcoin hovering around 88,000 right now. Ethereum up around 22,077. And Doge at 18 cents. Stay tuned now for the 790 KBC News Blitz with Randy Wang, and I'll be back with more at 4 tomorrow afternoon right here on Mottek On Money on 790 KBC.
Hi, I'm Joe Salciha, host of the Stacking Benjamin Show. We are diving into what should be in your little emergency go bag. What goes into your financial go bag?
Passport, driver's license, social security card.
Cash, credit cards, my wallet.
The most important thing, your master password.
OG just gave us the guns. That's all he needs.
Meaning the bicep.
Come and get them.
You never knew personal finance could be this fun. What's a big can of Colt 45 cost?
Stackers Anonymous. Is that about $3.50?
That's what
Dr. Pepper.
Like go bag. Stacking Benjamins. Follow and listen on your favorite platform.